book! So I finished Ready Player One. It is a fantastic book. You know, in the first few pages I was reading through this, and you know, it clearly seemed geared toward like a young adult audience, and so I was kind of like, oh, I might be a little bit too old for this. But the fact of the matter is, in a weird way, it's really geared toward not just my generation, but people even older than me, because everything is about the 80s. It's 80s music, it's 80s video games, 80s movies, television shows, so many references that I didn't catch, but the ones I did just made me tear up with happiness. There's an incredible nostalgia mashup, remix, you know, fan fiction kind of thing going on here. It's got equal parts like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the Lego Movie, Wreck-It Ralph kind of thing, of all these different franchises and things that you probably have a special place in your heart for, all coming together. You have things from, you know, like just an example, the main character has a Firefly class spaceship, so Firefly from the TV series Firefly, named the Vonnegut, because Kurt Vonnegut's books are kind of an influence here. Things like the Mandarax from Galapagos plays a role in this, crazy. And then he also has like an X-Wing, and all these different verses come together. In fact, there's an entire sector of this big open world virtual reality thing called the Whedonverse, and how geeky and wonderful is that? All these things that people love, pretty much anything you would see at Comic-Con has a place in this world, which is amazing. The world itself is very dystopian, but in a very believable way. It's basically like, oh, you know, once VR became basically more interesting than reality, which frankly I'm afraid that we're not too far away from that, people, rather than kind of dealing with the issues of the world, just kind of went into this world, and the world kind of fell apart. There's just kind of a layer of grime over everything, and it's scary because that really feels like a possible reality for the future to me, that it's going to reach a point where no one's going to want to deal with the real problems of the world, because you can just go into this fictional world and then everything is great down there. I've been hearing about this book for a while, dating back pretty much to when the Oculus Rift first came out, so sometime in 2011, 2012. The book came out in 2011, and everyone's like, oh, it's this like VR universe thing, and I thought it was going to be more of a essay kind of book. I had no idea it was actually a story, so I'm so glad I read it. I think the tipping point was finally hearing that Steven Spielberg was going to direct the movie, and that of course is really fascinating because there's like references to how bad like Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull was in this book, but again, Steven Spielberg, a huge part of the 80s, so it makes a lot of sense that he'd be involved in something like this, and I really hope they're able to bring together all the different genres and franchises and companies that would need to be basically saying, yes, you can use our property in this particular context, because that would be great. I'm really curious what the movie's going to be like, because there's a PG version of this and then there's like a rated R version of this, because it's made pretty clear that in this virtual world there's all sorts of crazy violent stuff, and there's, you know, all sorts of weird kinky sex things, and you know, I mean, even the fact that there's like a fair discussion in the book of like masturbation and all these kinds of different sexual practices and all the stuff that definitely would happen in virtual reality, where women go in as men and vice versa and do all sorts of fun freaky shit. But the book has no swearing, and like all the violence could totally just be, you know, PG-13 kind of violence. So if I had to guess, I'm assuming this is gonna be PG-13 movies. This book is just a great ride from start to finish. I think even with all the other things I have going on, I read the whole book in basically 4 days. I read at least half of it this weekend. This was by Ernest Cline. It's the first book he's ever written, and there's just such a love of fandom and geeky 80s pop culture in there that is just, it's infectious, and I really think that you, my friend, will enjoy it, so check it out. I give this book 5 stars with a confidence of 3 for now, because I'm still coming off the high of it, so who knows how I'll feel in a while. Ready Player One!